Mr. Sherman, members will be recognized by order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Back to you, Ms. Sherman. This 300-page document, what do you consider that? Is it more check the box reporting requirements, or does it actually help industry in protecting itself from cyber attacks?
While we haven't done an in-depth analysis of the recent rulemaking, we know that there's a number of the requirements that are carried over from the existing security directives intended to help, of course, improve the cybersecurity of surface transportation. We also think that training that's potentially to be implemented that's included as part of the rulemaking is a positive step forward. Deterrence is always really difficult, of course, to measure, but we do see this as an important step forward by TSA.
Mr. Gorman, in terms of the rulemaking itself, I mean, as you were speaking, I'm looking at, let's focus, say, on rail, okay? Mm-hmm. So much of this country's commerce, energy, et cetera, runs on rails. How much of our infrastructure now is interconnected and dependent on electronic systems for switching, scheduling, et cetera, making sure that that train is on this track at this time, et cetera, et cetera? How much of that is automated? How much of it is really susceptible to a cyber attack?
Specifically in the rail environment?
Yeah.
So I don't have an exact number for you, Chairman, but it is a large portion, particularly with the enactment of systems like mandatory positive train control and the interconnectedness thereof of the rail network. It is a federal requirement that those rail entities actually have that system in operation for safety purposes. And so that system, as well as things like switching and others, are what provided TSA the methodology by which we scoped in those rail entities that you see within the NPRM language, particularly those Class 1 rail entities that provide the bulk of the movement for the goods and services that you just referenced, sir, as well as a small amount of short line and regional railroads that, while of a smaller entity size, provide critical functions to the function of the overall system, or provide critical national security functions in the rail environment that we deemed as necessary for the protection of this rule.
How vulnerable are we to, say, a massive cyber attack on our rail system that basically paralyzes our rail system in the United States?
I think it varies across the system, sir, and these measures particularly are meant to raise the cyber resiliency of both rail, pipeline, and other entities that fall within the scope. And built off of specifically industry standards as listed in things like existing NIST cybersecurity frameworks, as well as CISR's recently cybersecurity performance goals to make sure that we are continuing to raise the bar for cybersecurity, particularly in these critical assets in transportation.
But no matter how much you raise the bar for cybersecurity, this is a constant game of one-upmanship, right? And eventually, if somebody really wants to penetrate it, eventually you have to account for the eventuality of us losing that or somebody penetrating the system and wreaking havoc on the United States. In these rules, do you account for that, and do you mandate resiliency so that, worst case scenario, you have to get off the grid? Will we be able to still transport goods and services by the old method? Or are we so reliant on the new method that we've forgotten the old method and we'll be basically stuck in gridlock?
So given the dynamic nature of the cybersecurity freight that we face now and we anticipate facing in the future, I think there's three primary areas of this rule that are germane to your question. First, we learned based on the performance of the requirements that are existing in our current issued SDs of a performance-based model is the model to move into both now and into the future. These requirements that we have in the NPRM as posted, we believe provide both specificity in the outcomes that we are requiring, as well as flexibility for operators to adapt those to their specific operations, systems, and technologies to achieve those. As well as our overall goal is to prevent the disruption of critical services. And so as we are looking to work with industry, we drive these requirements at those critical assets that are determined within their operations. And thirdly, we are mandating that these owner-operators develop, maintain, and regularly exercise response plans, particularly for potential incidents that may occur on or directly to their networks, to provide redundancy and ability to quickly respond and recover from those instances.
Thank you. My time is up now. I recognize the ranking member, Mr.